It was a mistake that I made where I began to focus on who had left. I focused on who had already left. And what that did in me is it caused pain, but it actually created action in me, not for the better. What I did was I took the pain and I looked at the people that had not left, and I started to figure out and try to manipulate ways to make sure no one else left. But eventually the Lord really twisted that, worked a new way in my thinking. And I went from worrying about who had left, okay, and the Lord really shifted my thinking from focusing on who had left to who is left. Hey, what's up, ReLeaders? Welcome back to another episode of the ReLeader podcast. Again, as I say every time, we are a community of people that are coming together. We need friends. We need other people. We need iron that sharpens iron. And we pray that this podcast and this community is that for you. If you want to go deeper dive than just the podcast, we have a website and a community completely dedicated to this. You can simply go to ReLeader.co, ReLeader.co. On there, you're going to find a lot of articles. We push out a lot of content every single week to help you in your releading. We also have occasional live chats on Zoom where you can get to know other people in your community. You can comment, interact with other releaders all over the world. And so we're just excited that you're here with us. We also have other resources. We have a book that's come out called ReLeader, How to Fix What You Didn't Break. You can get this on Amazon or wherever books are sold. But I'm so glad that you're here today as we dive into another podcast, another topic that is specifically for us as ReLeaders. So I want to tell the story when I first became the pastor of Victory Church. It was on the heels of a moral failure, and I told this story in the book, but there was a time when I was standing behind these double doors that swing open, and I was about to walk into the sanctuary. And in a moment, I was having this question. It was very early on, just a matter of weeks after I'd become the lead pastor. And I was really doubting myself. I was doubting my abilities, and I was asking this question inside my head. Will there be anybody behind this door? If we're honest as leaders, we have to present something on the front end, but in our inner self, in our inner dialogue, we're asking ourselves really hard questions and insecure questions sometimes. And I was wondering if anybody was even going to be here. And I remember opening the doors to the sanctuary, and there were people there. There were significantly less people there. We had lost hundreds, if not 1,000 congregants during the season. We were bleeding out. The new guy was there. We had had a moral failure. I was the new guy coming in. Can you trust this guy? Do you like this guy? And what I saw happen over the next several months was just a slow departure of people, right? It's hard to not take that personal. It's hard to receive the rejection. And what do I do with this rejection? It feels like betrayal. I wrote this in the book. I want to just read you just a blurb that I wrote in the book. I said this. I said, the hardest part of my releading journey was seeing people who I loved leave. And while I understood why they would respond that way to our lead pastor's moral failure, I couldn't help but feel a little betrayed. I found myself constantly thinking of people I hadn't seen in weeks, adding them to the list of families who had walked out and would not return. During this season of my life, I made the mistake that many ReLeaders make that I want to try to combat today. It was a mistake that I made where I began to focus on who had left. I focused on who had already left. And what that did in me is it caused pain, but it actually created action in me, not for the better. What I did was I took the pain and I looked at the people that had not left, and I started to figure out and try to manipulate ways to make sure no one else left. And this can overpower us as leaders. And before you know it, you're becoming a people pleaser. You're doing things that you would have never done in your leadership because the hurt of people leaving, the potential of them leaving, can actually cause us to lead in ways that we would have never led before. So I want to reverse our thinking as ReLeaders, okay? And eventually, I wish I would have learned this a lot sooner in my ReLeader journey, but eventually the Lord really twisted that, worked a new way in my thinking. And I went from worrying about who had left, okay? And the Lord really shifted my thinking from focusing on who had left to who is left, all right? I'm going to say that one more time. It's a small tweak in the way we think, but instead of focusing on who has left or who has had left in my situation, who's left? Let me look at who hasn't left. And sometimes, let's be honest, that can be discouraging. Let's be super honest. Sometimes you wish the people that had left wouldn't have left, and you wish the people that stayed would have left. Sometimes you look at who's left, and you're like, man, all the sharp ones left. All of my greatest assets and my greatest resources have left. But I want to shift your thinking today, and I want to use a story in the Bible to do so. But I want to focus your attention on the power of what I would call the remnant. Okay, the remnant is what's left. There's this great story in the book of Judges about Gideon and Gideon's army, and Gideon had imposter syndrome. He had this overwhelming thinking that he wasn't capable of doing what God had called him to do. He finally overcomes his insecurities, accepts the calling like many of us do in our leadership journeys. And then he is given this army, and 32,000 troops arrive. And even 32,000 wasn't enough, right? So let's be aware of this. He had 32,000 troops, but in comparison to the armies of the enemies, it says that they looked like sand on the seashore. So they were already outnumbered. And then God takes him through this journey, right? Like all of us as ReLeaders have experienced. When you step into your new ReLeader journey, people are going to leave. Some of your staff are going to leave. Some of your customers are going to leave. Some of your clientele are going to leave. Some of your congregation are going to leave because you're the new guy and you're different. So Gideon's army dwindles from 32,000 all the way down to 300. Now I want you to think about that. Okay. I want you to think about going down whatever yours is. Okay. So name your number, name the number of your staff, name the number of your clients, name the number of your church. Imagine having 1% of that. Okay. So he went down more than you could even fathom. And what he's left with was the remnant. Now you can go and read the rest of the story, but God does something miraculous with the remnant. Okay. And so what I want to do is I want to take your attention and your focus off of the 32,000, off of who has left. And for the remainder of our time today, I want to put your focus on who is left, okay, and the power that they possess. And in the book of Haggai, when they're rebuilding the temple, something happens in the remnant, in the hearts of the remnant. So Zerubbabel, as I go into in the book, is the ReLeader that's called to come back and rebuild the temple. And he has Jeshua with him. Some translations say Joshua. And then there's a third person that helps Zerubbabel. Let me show you this to you. Haggai chapter 1, verse 14. It says, so the Lord sparked the enthusiasm of Zerubbabel, okay, governor of Judah. And so it wasn't just him. He also sparked the enthusiasm of Jeshua, okay, the high priest. And, okay, so there's a third component to your ReLeader journey. It says, and the enthusiasm of the whole remnant of God's people. It's interesting that it uses the word whole and remnant, okay? So it's not in totality. It's not the 32,000 that Gideon had. It was the whole 300, okay? And I want to take and show you today, I want to give you 5 reasons that why the people that are left can do extraordinary things, okay, in your organization or in your church. All right, so 5 things that God wants to do through the remnant of what you have. Number 1, here's why the remnant is powerful. Number 1, the remnant is receptive, okay? Are they perfect? Are they who you would have picked? Maybe not, maybe so, maybe not. But let me tell you something about the remnant that's there. They're receptive. What does that mean? It means that one of the number 1 benefits to the remnant is they are ready to go, okay? They had every reason to leave, but they didn't, okay? They're the first line of defense. They're the first group of people that believed in you enough to not leave you. So they're ready to go. The remnant is receptive. When I became the lead pastor of Victory Church in November, it was November the 2nd, 2014, I realized really quickly that a lot of people left, okay? Oh, probably over 1,000 people left our church. A lot of staff left. We had staff that transitioned out. This wasn't going to be a good fit for them. They didn't like my leadership. God was calling them elsewhere. That's fine, right? I was left with a remnant. What I realized really quickly was this remnant was ready to go. They were ready for new vision. And so what it allowed me to do was to move quicker with vision than I might have been able to otherwise. So took over November 2nd, 2014. February, 4 months later, I changed the core values of the church. I changed the vision of the church. When it came to the vision of the church, I was able to move quickly because the benefit of the remnant is that they were receptive, okay? Those that weren't receptive of me and my leadership left. Those who stayed were. So I capitalized on that. Number two, the remnant is reliable, okay? This is a really good component. This is a really good benefit to your remnant. They had every reason to leave, but they didn't. They're there. They stayed with you. They stood by your side when they had every reason to leave. Now, this is another teaching I've done. Pastor Jimmy Evans has taught on this, and I love this component because winter is actually a really good thing in your organization. And if you're a ReLeader, you either have been or you are right now, or you will be later, be going through some sort of winter, okay? The thing about winter in seasons is it comes every year and it goes every year. So it's a life cycle of nature. It's the same in your organization. There are going to be times of spring, times of summer, times of fall, times of winter. There is a benefit in winter, okay? Winter has its benefits. So if you have a garden or a flower bed at your house, what I like to do, what Michelle and I, my wife and I like to do, because we don't love working in flower beds, we like to plant perennials, okay? Now, if you have a green thumb, I don't, but if you have a green thumb, you know the difference between a perennial and an annual, okay? An annual is something that has to be planted every single year. So every single spring, you're going to have to replant those flowers because they didn't survive the winter. Perennials have the ability to survive winter, okay? So they die, they go dormant in the winter. Come spring, when the soil warms up, they pop right back up. And not only do they pop back up, they pop up bigger, stronger, more fruitful than they were the year before. Okay, so here's the benefit of the remnant, okay? The remnant that has stayed with you are so reliable. You can trust them because they survived winter, okay? You don't have to replant them. Some left, some didn't. And what winter does is winter reveals and exposes the annuals from the perennials. So those that have survived through the hardest times with me, you know what? They're dependable. They're reliable. So what do? I trust them with more. They have proven to me that they were with me in the darkest of times, in the winters, in the lack, right? In the down years financially, in the down years as a church. They are your perennials. They are reliable. The remnant, okay? The remnant that's with you right now, they're not going anywhere. Even when bullets start flying past your head, they are right there with you. They got your back. This is a massive benefit to the remnant. I would rather have 300 people that are reliable than 32,000 people that are unreliable. And what you have left is reliable. Okay, so number three, the remnant is resourceful. Okay, don't you love how all these start with an R? The remnant is resourceful. Here's what I mean by that. When you step in as a ReLeader, if you step into a season that's difficult, right? Resources are lacking. Your budgets are lacking. Maybe it's a time issue. Maybe it's a staffing issue. Maybe you don't have as many staff. Your budgets aren't as big. It's a lot of things that used to be here and now they're here, right? They've gone down and to the right. So the remnant that's with you, they understand this. Again, they didn't go anywhere, okay? Their budgets were cut. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't get the cost of living increase. Guess what? They didn't go anywhere. They may have even taken a pay cut. They may have taken on another hat, right? So because you have less staff, you have people wearing multiple hats. Guess what? They didn't go anywhere. They didn't go anywhere. They're resourceful. They know how to pivot hard temporarily and go through tough times, and they're resourceful because of it. So we have a guy on our staff. He's our CFO at the church. And he always says this, I think this is a great quote. He always says, if you want real creativity, take a zero out of your budget, okay? And what he means by that is anybody can be creative with big budgets, okay? Anybody can be creative with consultants and farming out and contracting out labor and having all the best equipment and the best production equipment and the best whatever it is your organization has. What real creativity is when you don't have the resources that you used to have, okay? The remnant that you have, they're so resourceful. They don't complain. They're not bickering and complaining. They are taking what they got and they're being resourceful with it. And this is why the remnant is so powerful, and you should appreciate this component of them. Okay, number 4, the reason the remnant is powerful is because the remnant is resilient. Okay, it's kind of a piggyback on what we talked about earlier, but these people understand pain. I love one of my favorite books by Sam Chand, a good friend of mine, called Leadership Pain, and how he says a lot of great quotes in this book, but one of the quotes he says is, never trust a leader that doesn't limp. And he doesn't call it leadership, he calls it bleedership. What I've realized is the people that I walked through really hard times with, so like my leadership team, people that have been with me the whole time I've been the lead pastor, but they've also been with me long before I was ever there. Okay. These people are resilient, man. And what I've realized is that there's a bond that happens. Okay. A really, really strong bond that happens when you walk through difficult times. There could be these two guys who were in World War II together, or Vietnam together, or the Korean War together, and they haven't seen each other for 20 years. And they get back together, and the bond is there. Why? Because they were in a foxhole together. Bullets were flying past their heads, and they had to sleep back to back to watch each other's back at night while they slept. These kind of seasons that you're walking through right now with your team, these kind of seasons that you're walking through with your constituencies in your church or your business, I know it's hard. I know it's brutal, but the remnant that is there is so resilient. And never forget the resilience of your remnant. Tell them how thankful you are for them. Tell them that you understand what they're sacrificing. These are not weaklings. These are warriors. These are warriors ready to charge the hill with you. And never, ever forget that. King David had his mighty men. Well, we need to be mindful of where these mighty men came from. The Bible says that David was in the cave of Adullam. So think about this. He had already been anointed king, but he was in a cave. And the Bible says that the disgruntled and the distressed and the discouraged and all these people going through wounds and pain came to David, okay? And these are the ones who became his mighty men. They did not start as warriors, okay? They started as wounded people, hurt. David led them through their pain, led them in a way that was encouraging and inspiring, so much so that these weaklings, these wounded people became his warriors that defended him and prepared him for the palace. So never take your remnant for granted because you're so focused on who has left. I want to be kind here, but forget them, okay? Forget who's left, and you need to focus on who is left and who's with you because they're resilient. And last but not least, the reason you should focus on the remnant is because they're resolute, okay? These people are resolute. They demonstrate a firm determination and an unwavering focus on their goals, okay? If you cast vision to them, they will absorb it like a sponge. They are resolute. What they are hungry for is a leader that's focused more on them than on who's left, okay? Run to your remnant. I don't care how small it is. I don't care if you're a pastor and you've got one person on staff. I don't care if you're an organization and you used to have 18 staff members and you're down to 8, or you used to be an organization that had $10 million in revenue and now you have $2 million in revenue. Stop focusing on what has left and start focusing on who is left because they are resolute. I'll finish with this story. You can steal this if you want. So one time my leadership team, we went on a retreat, and I actually wrote this in the very first part of my book when I'm giving my acknowledgments, and no one even really knows what this means, but now you do because I'll tell you. So we were just in the pits of hell. Okay, our leadership team, we were going through some of those we were in winter of our ReLeader journey, and we went on a retreat, okay, to go away for 2 or 3 days to start a new year. And one night we wanted to watch this movie, and we were looking for a movie to watch. And we ended up watching this movie called Fury. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Fury, and I'm not condoning it has cuss words in it and things like that. But I'm not. It's a military movie from World War II about the tank brigade, the people that were driving the tanks and going around in the tanks. And it follows this one particular tank and the crew that's in this tank, and they follow them on all these journeys and all these missions and what they overcame and what they went through. And the very end of the movie, they're sitting around this tank and they have depleted all of their artillery. They have no more bullets, no more no more defense mechanisms at all, and the enemy is closing in on them. And they know, they have no doubt that this is the end, like they're about to die. And they're just exhausted, and they're sitting in the tank, and there's about 4 or 5 of them, and they're kind of smoking their last cigarette, right? And having this conversation, and they're laughing, and they know this is the end. And they make this statement, right? They say these words that we adopted, okay, and it got us through some dark times. One of them looks over at Brad Pitt's one of the main characters, and he looks over at Brad Pitt, and he says, "Best job I ever had. Best job I ever had." And that's a comical way. They're about to die, but we adopted that, and it got us through a lot of dark days, a lot of difficult meetings, a lot of difficult times. We would text it, we would say it to one another in meetings. We would just look at each other and say, "Best job I ever had." I want you to know that your remnant is resilient. Your remnant is resolute. They are ready for leadership. And what I'm begging you and urging you to do, if you're in the middle of a situation, no matter what it is, no matter if you've been there a year or 5 years, winter comes off and on. You're going to go through dark times. You're going to go through down times. I am asking you, I'm begging you to begin to appreciate what is left. The remnant is powerful, okay? The remnant has the ability to do amazing things for you and for your organization. Let me quickly go through them again. Number one, the remnant is receptive. They believe in you. Show them what to do. Give them vision. Number two, the remnant is reliable, okay? You can depend on them. They coulda, shoulda, woulda. Maybe they should have left, but they didn't. They're there. They're reliable. Number three, the remnant is resourceful. They will be resourceful with what the tools that you have left. Number four, the remnant is resilient. And number five, the remnant is resolute. Stop focusing on who left. Turn your attention to who is left. All right. I love you. I encourage you. I believe in you. What God is doing through you is spectacular. It's important. Don't quit. Keep it up. You know someone who needs to hear this podcast. All right. You know somebody. You know a ReLeader that's going through a difficult time right now. Send them this episode. Invite them to our ReLeader community. I will see you on the next podcast episode, and I'll see you at ReLeader.co. Have an amazing day.